Hi, this is Ron Darling.
This is Skip Lockwood.
Hi, I'm Ron Swoboda of the 69 New York Mets, and you're listening to MetsMusings with Gary Mack.
Now it's time for some New York Mets baseball talk. Here's Gary Mack bringing you the latest news and analysis from Mets Nation and the world of baseball on another edition of Mets Musings.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Mets Musings. Hope everybody had a great week out there. Well, the Mets have lost their first series of this campaign, this 2022 season. They lost to the Seattle Mariners 2-1. They lost Friday night, bounced back Saturday with a nice win, but lost on Sunday, falling short with a late inning rally. So, first loss of a series during the year, but still maintain a nice lead in first place. They are 6 games up, and St. Louis comes into town. The Mets split the doubleheader yesterday after being rained out on Monday, as we record this on Wednesday, and get ready to play the Cardinals tonight and tomorrow afternoon, and then fly out to Colorado to take on the Rockies. Well, more about that series with my very special guest after some news and notes here. So let's get to the news on the other news on the Mets. Jacob deGrom had a follow-up imaging MRI done on his shoulder, and it revealed continual healing in the scapula. The deGrom will continue to build distance and velocity in his throwing program. He has been throwing on flat ground. He's up to about 75 feet, or 60 feet, 60 to 75 feet at light intensity. The idea, of course, is to stretch that out, build up his arm strength before he gets to go on the mound, and then, of course, he will continue to do that and get to his rehab assignment, which could be sometime in June. Don't expect to see him much before July. Maybe late June, but I wouldn't count on it. I would think that early to mid-July would be a target date. The Mets have set no target date, and that's a good thing. I know it sounds crazy to say that, but right now it's a good thing. You do not want to rush him back. It's that simple. Do not want to rush him back. Let him take time. Let him get healed. They are keeping their head above water, though they have fallen into a routine where they win one, lose one, win one, lose one, win one, lose one. I'll take that for now. At least, again, they are keeping their head above water. Nobody in the division has gotten hot. Every other team is below 500. So they're still in pretty good shape in that way. So, though we have, more injuries. The James McCann, the catcher, or starting catcher, has a hamate fracture in his left hand. He underwent surgery. He will miss around 6 weeks. Patrick Mazeika has been called up, and in his first game in the majors this year, he hit a homer to win the game. So, not a walk-off. He hit it in the 8th, but still hit a homer that won the game, and he does a fine job. Struggled a little bit with Chris Bassett getting the signs and everything, but they'll work it out. They've got time, and Masika will do a nice job, I'm sure. He's known by everybody, and so it should be okay. Tyler Mcgill, on the other hand, was placed on the 15-day injured list retroactive to May 12th due to right biceps inflammation. His fellow righty Colin Holderman, who we talked about a couple of weeks ago on the Down on the Farm segment, he has been selected to take his place on the active roster, to take McGill's place, and to make room for Holderman on the 40-man roster. Righty Trevor May has been transferred to the 60-day injured list. So those moves made to shore up the bullpen. And we had Trevor Williams come out of the bullpen yesterday and pitch a nice 4 innings. And Jake Reed came out of the bullpen to pitch 3 innings of shutout ball, and the Mets went on to win that first game against the Cardinals. So the bullpen game pitched pretty well. Taijuan Walker struggled a little bit in the nightcap, and so that's what happens sometimes. So that is the Mets. Oh, Brandon Nimmo also fouled the ball off his knee, and he will be day-to-day. A test was done yesterday or last evening, and everything seems to be okay. It looks like a bad bruise, so he'll be day-to-day. Nimmo's a pretty tough character. Would be, I think we'll see him sooner rather than later. So injuries starting to creep up there, but not too bad as of yet. We've got some news on some pitchers in the minors that could possibly step in for Mcgill. Williams, as I said, pitched well. They will probably try to stretch him more the next time. He went 4 yesterday. If he gets another start, and I think he probably deserves a shot, they'll probably, depending upon what happens, they'll probably let him go 4 or 5 and try to stretch him out a little bit from just doing relief to a starting spot until Mcgill can come back. And don't forget, we still have David Peterson at AAA, and more on him, as I said, a little bit later in the podcast. He's pitching very well down there. So, that's good news for the Mets as well. So, what you don't want to have happen has happened. There's a little spate of injuries, but so far the Mets have remained relatively healthy and have been able to weather the storm. As I said, they've been playing, they've gotten into that win one, lose one kind of a rut. And look, I will take that. It's better than a losing streak. So you'll take the win one, lose one, not for long run, but for the time being until they can right the ship and get things going. The offense has been very spotty. It's either very good or non-existent. And that's something they have to work on, and they're not getting key hits like they were early in the year. They had chances. They really could have swept Seattle over the weekend. I mean, they had a lot of chances, and they could have took the doubleheader yesterday against St. Louis. They had their chances in the second game, did not take advantage of it, and one point they tied up the game, and actually I believe they had the lead, and Taijuan Walker gave it right back to them. So, it's a little bit of a slump right now, if you want to call it that. But this team is too good, and the depth is hanging in there. And they've been showing that. So let's hope that we avoid other injuries, serious injuries at least, and can right the ship and go on a nice long winning streak. This will be a tough road trip, though. They are going to Colorado. Anytime you go out west, it is, it's difficult. It's not easy. It's a whole different atmosphere. It's the travel. Colorado's tough because of the Mile High City, and the weather could be an issue out there. So we'll have to see. And so they are going to Colorado, and then they're going to San Francisco to play the Giants. A lot of traveling in the next few weeks, which is not great either. So, but we'll see how it affects the Metsies. All right, I'll be back in a minute with a great guest for you. We're going to break down the upcoming Colorado series between the Mets and the Rockies as the Mets travel out to the Mile High City. All that to come in just a minute, right after this.
Baseball and BBQ, your place for interesting baseball talk, opinions, and history.
Baseball and BBQ, your place for barbecue recipes, tips, and interviews from the world of barbecue. If you like baseball and if you like barbecue, then tune in to Baseball and BBQ. Find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and BaseballTalkRadio.com.
Wouldn't it be great if you could get a PhD in life through baseball? Welcome to Baseball PhD, a tour company for your brain. 30 major league teams, 100 places to see. Let's touch them all as we make the road trip of a lifetime.
Follow me on Facebook at facebook.com/MetsMusings, on Twitter at MetsMusingsGM. The Instagram is MetsMusings, and on YouTube at MetsMusings Mack. Wish to be a part of the show? Give us a call at 516-619-6341. Joining me this week is Noah Yingling. He's no stranger to the MetsMusings airwaves. He was with us last year. He is the editor, or one of the editors, of the Rox Pile, and that is a Colorado Rockies blog, and he also does a podcast for them, and he'll tell us all about that as well. Noah, welcome back to Musings.
Thanks for having me again.
It's a pleasure to have you, Noah. And Colorado Rockies, we don't see a lot of them, unfortunately. We only get to see them maybe once a year. And the Mets are traveling out to the mountain city, if you will, the Rocky Mountain High for the Mets. And I understand, we were talking before, the weather may be a question mark.
Yeah, because of course there was a few years ago the Mets were out there for opening day, and if I remember correctly, the entire series was snowed out. But I mean that's end of March, early April. It's on Friday. It's gonna be what, May 20th, and there is a chance of snow in Denver.
Oh my gosh.
The high on Friday is supposed to be in the low 40s, and then the low is supposed to be in like the high 20s, low 30s. And then, it's supposed to be precipitation all day. So there's literally a chance of snow on Friday during the Mets game. Of course, it's against the Mets. And then, it just has to be. And then on Thursday, the day before, the Rockies at least have an off day, and it's supposed to be 90 degrees. And
Jeez.
That is classic Colorado weather. Literally going from freezing, is going from 90 to freezing in a 24-hour period. It's absolutely mind-boggling.
Did they ever think of putting a dome on that stadium or anything like that?
They thought about it, but of course, when the Rockies they first became a team in the early 90s, 93, all the MLB stadiums were going away from the cookie cutter NFL stadiums where they were sharing them with them. So they shared Mile High Stadium with the Broncos the first 2 years. But then they tried getting a dome, but they were like, we just need a new stadium that's more fit for baseball. So they got a downtown location, and it's a great location for it. But it'd be really nice if they had a dome. But it's usually only like once a year that there's snow there. It just happens to be when the Mets are there. That's the thing.
Yeah, it always seems. Remember, a few going back a few years now. I remember when like the whole team was out there shoveling the snow so they could get in the doubleheader. It snowed on a Friday. I don't know what day of the week it was, but it snowed on the night before, and then the next day the team was out there helping the guys shuffle the snow, just so they could get that double header in. And it's crazy, but I think, like you said before, I think that was early part of the season, March or April,
Yeah.
when that occurred, instead of this. Not that it's late in the season, but
Yeah.
this late.
We're a quarter of the way through the season almost
Yeah,
now.
it's
like
it's late. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's gonna snow on May 20th, and I mean you're almost a week away from June. It's like, come on.
It's nuts. It's just nuts. But that's the way, we were talking before, and I said I don't know how people can live like that, but I guess they get used to it.
Yeah, and I mean, like, even going out there last year, because if you've never been out to Colorado before, for us, including me, that live in relative sea level, I live in Ohio, so I'm in like 600 feet, and going out there, like, for me, I can do plenty of stairs here. I went up the stairs of the press box there. It was one flight, and I'm like, I'm out of breath, and everybody's looking at me like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, I live at sea level. I don't live at altitude. There's no altitude. Don't blame me. Yeah, they're just looking at me like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, I can do 10 flights of stairs at home. I can't do them here. Sorry.
Right. Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough thing, and it always amazes me with the ball players that they're able to adjust, and they really have to adjust quickly, because like the Mets are playing an afternoon game Thursday and then flying out to play Friday evening in Colorado. And, that's I always expect them to lose the first game of the series when they do something like that, because it's just, sometimes they surprise you, though. Sometimes they play better,
Yeah, I mean, that's especially with Coors Field. I mean, especially here in the last like week and a half, the Rockies have actually hit very well, but they've lost 8 out of their last 10 entering Tuesday, that is, because the pitching staff, it's like just finding the consistency at Coors Field of with the altitude, with the pitching, with breaking balls not being the same. There's so many different things changing, where you see it where first game of the series, the Mets might have won 10 in a row, and then they come in, or any team could win 10 in a row. They come to Colorado and they're like, what happened? It's like the balloon. You let all the air out of the balloon.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about the pitching staff, and it's going to be down a guy. I read that Antonio Senzatella has got a back injury. What's the word on him? And will he be back for the series, or will he definitely miss this? Is he going on the IL? What's the deal?
In fact, about 15 minutes before we came on here, he was placed on the injured list. So the Rockies, though, they haven't announced what the starting plan will be, because he was slated to start Sunday's game against the Mets. But as I mentioned, the Rockies have an off day on Thursday. So their starting pitcher today, Tuesday, Chad Kuhl, he could start on Sunday and be on regular rest. So that could be something they could do. Personally, I would think that's probably what they would go with. They could go with a bullpen game, but minor league, and this is the problem with the Rockies in general, they don't have a ton of minor league depth. And earlier in the year, they had to call up their ace from AAA. His name's Ryan Feltner, and he made his debut last year, and he made 2 starts, and he had an ERA over 10. He came up for 1 start this year. He started in Philadelphia, and he was bombed in that outing as well. So that's the thing with the Rockies, is they have overall on paper, their starting pitching staff is good, but if they have an injury, it's like, okay, where do we go? So they do have that off day built in, so they could, at least to start out, have Chad Kuhl pitch on Sunday and be on regular rest.
Now you mentioned that they were hitting like crazy. They're first in the league in hitting, uh, according to what I'm reading here, but their earned run averages they're 28th, and that's what kills you, I guess. That pitching staff is not living up to expectations. But what were the expectations going into the season? I mean, they did break up the team. What was it, 2 years ago now or so?
Yeah.
When they traded Arenado um, Story left, and so what was the expectations going into this season?
The expectations really were that the past few years the offense had not been good. And in fact, if you adjusted it for the park, which you really have to do with the Rockies since they play half their home games at Coors Field, if you did park adjustment stats, they had one of the bottom 5 offenses in the entire sport. And mind you, that's before they lost Trevor Story, because he was with them last year. He had a down year. He was injured. He was injured, played through the injury. It was a shoulder injury. So he wasn't quite as good at the plate, but really everybody else struggled. So in fact, their best hitter was CJ Cron, who is still on the team, their first baseman.
Mm-hmm.
And they literally signed him on a minor league deal to an invite to spring training. He had 28 homers and 92 RBI, but it was the first season in Rockies history that they didn't have somebody with 100 RBI and 30 homers. And they've been around for 30 years now. So
yeah,
they knew that they had to address the offense, and they thought their pitching staff was good because, and again, pitching at Coors Field is a little bit different elsewhere in that they wanted pitchers that have ground ball rates that are higher, which they've seen success with their starting pitchers with that, and the low fastball spin rate, which the lower, because in altitude the ball doesn't spin as well, that's why breaking balls don't work as well there.
Mm-hmm.
So they were looking for pitchers with low fastball spin rates, because in fact it was 4 of their 5 starting pitchers were in the top 30 in all of baseball of ground ball rate and low fastball spin rate. Those 4 starting pitchers all had an ERA that was at least 1 run lower in Colorado than on the road. So they really figured out last year how to pitch at Coors Field, because everybody was like, why are they pitching better at Coors Field?
Right.
And then if you dove into the numbers, all 4 of them, all 4 of their main starters lined up with that. And the one starter that he didn't pitch as well at Coors Field, and he pitched better on the road. And ironically enough, one of the things that the Rockies have been trying to do too is get Colorado natives, because if you've grown up with altitude all your life, you're more likely to pitch better at altitude. Just thinking out loud, it's just like, oh, okay, that makes total sense.
You're right.
Naturally, the one starting pitcher that didn't pitch as well at Coors Field, he's a Colorado native. So of course it's baseball. There's got to be some kind of outlier there. So yeah, he was the one that did not pitch as well at Coors Field, but the other 4 starting pitchers did. They lost one of them, John Gray, to free agency. He signed with Texas. But then they signed Chad Kuhl, who I mentioned a moment ago. He'll be most likely starting on Sunday. He was with the Pirates before, and the Rockies' former manager, Clint Hurdle, was the manager for Chad Kuhl in Pittsburgh. Clint Hurdle just rejoined the Rockies in their front office. So he was part of the reason why he came to Colorado. And he was one of those pitchers that fit that mold of the high ground ball rate, low fastball spin rate. And he's actually been their best starter so far. in theory, he's their 5th starter, but he's been their best starter so far. But the problem for the Rockies has been this year, they have the good ground ball rate. They have the low fastball spin rate with their pitchers, but they're getting too much contact. Like Herman Marquez, he was their only all-star last year, and he has an ERA of 6.16 in 7 starts this year. He still has all of what was working for him last year, but now he's giving up 11 hits per 9 innings, which that's never good.
Yeah.
So now they're trying to get the contact rate lower. So that's one of the things with the Rockies of they really have to be a team that's more forward thinking than everyone else, because they have to play baseball different than everyone else because of the altitude. But their research and analytics department is nowhere near where it should be. In fact, they hired a new person to head their analytics department last September with like 2 weeks left in the season. They fired him before spring training even started because essentially creative differences. He used to be an analyst for the Nationals when they won the World Series. So people were like, okay, wow, they're actually going forward with this. And then they fired him a few months later. It's like, oh boy, back to the same old, same old. So and again, with baseball in general, I mean, you could win one day, even though you could be an awful team, but it's just creating the consistency. And at least so far this year, they've not found the consistency.
Yeah. And they did make a big free agent acquisition, though, this offseason, signing Chris Bryant. And I understand he's hurt as well now. Is he still on the IL, or is he coming off, or what is the deal with Mr. Bryant?
Right now, he is on the injured list. He is on a rehab assignment, though. So if all goes well, he will be returning on Friday for the Mets series.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. So the thing with him has been, and the Rockies, a lot of people are surprised that the Rockies signed him, but I wasn't as I was still surprised, but I wasn't as surprised as many people because when he was drafted by the Cubs, this was back in 2013. He was the 2nd overall pick. The Rockies had the 3rd overall pick that year. They wanted Chris Bryant. Their scouting director at the time was Bill Schmidt. Bill Schmidt is now their GM. So he said in the press conference after they signed him, he said, I've been chasing him for over 10 years now, because he wanted to draft him in 2010 when he was a high schooler as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was drafted, but then he decided to go to college. So he said, yeah, I've been trying to sign him for over a decade now. And they've kept a good relationship. Chris Bryant said, of all the cities I've ever visited in the major leagues, Denver is my favorite. And when he was an all-star last year, since the all-star game was at Coors Field, he said, yeah, I walked in the home clubhouse since he was on the National League side. And he said, I'd never seen a better clubhouse in my life. So immediately I was like, if the Rockies give me any kind of good offer, I'm going to sign there. And I mean, it's not like they gave him a 1-year deal for $100,000. They gave him $182 million for 7 years. So it was the biggest contract that he was offered, but it also helped that he had the connections and he liked Denver as well.
Yeah, of course. And sometimes you'll take I mean, he didn't take any less money, but sometimes you will if you like the city and the organization, like you said, and it just seemed a little surprising to me because I didn't think they were in a position to be ready to accept to make that kind of signing for them with their team, being in a not a state of flux, but in a rebuilding program. And but like you said, he liked it there. They had a chance and they grabbed him. So good for them. It's good for the fans too, because it does show that they're at least trying to do something and build up the team. And get them going. Now, another guy that was a thorn in the side of the Mets and still out there is Charlie Blackman, and he seems to be having a rough year this year, though.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is his age. I mean, on July 1st, he'll be turning 36. So he's not in the prime of his career anymore, but he even last year he walked a lot, so his on base percentage was high, but the average was down, the power was down. And defensively, especially defensively, he's never been one of the world's best defenders, but he was, at least in the prime of his career, he was around average. And now he was before in center field. They moved him to right field before the 2019 season. And even then, there's even been times this year where you see him, and granted, Coors Field, it's got a huge outfield, but it's like just reading some of the plays where you're like, okay, he really ideally he would be a full-time DH. Part of it is pride for him, and part of it is the Rockies are with their veterans, they are more willing to oblige to them of, okay, you want to play right field every day, okay, we'll try to get you in right field as much as possible. But the DH has really been a great thing for the Rockies in that they have a guy named Connor Joe who can play first, left, and right, and he's also DH some as well. So they can kind of rotate their outfielders and their first baseman CJ Crone along with Connor Joe in the DH spot. So like Chris Bryant, he's actually been, even though he's been primarily a third baseman in years past, he's a left fielder for the Rockies. And he had played left field before, but it wasn't his primary spot. But like, I even talked with him a few weeks ago, and he said it's nice to be able to just have one position and play it. Now, he's struggled defensively too, but he's like, I've just being able to just work on one position and say, I know I'm going to be playing left field, or in his case, he's DH'd a few times, but defensively, he's just been in left field. And that's the same thing with Charlie Blackman, where he's like, okay, it's nice that I can just be in right field, but defensively, it's like, ideally he would be a full-time DH, but they've been rotating him in and out. And in years past, like especially before the Rockies were in the playoffs, Blackman played left, center, and right, where he was able to do it. But as with most people, the consistency of, oh, I'm going to be here every night, and in a way that's helped him. But like I said, part of it is on the back end of his career now, where it's like, it's not ideal to have him in right field, but he's out there probably 5-6 days a week in right field, and it's like, it'd be better if he was 5 or 6 days a week as a DH. But even like you said, with struggling at the plate, I mean, do you want a DH that's hitting 217?
Well, that's it. The Mets had the same kind of problem with Robinson Cano, and he just wasn't hitting. They owe him like a ton of money. Like, I don't know, I think it's 40, 70 million, something like that, because he still got, it's a lot of money they had to pay him. And they just let him walk. They just released him because he was not performing, and he couldn't play second base. His range is down a lot, so he was really hurting and keeping younger guys that were performing better out of the lineup. So I'm glad they made the decision. It's a tough decision to make when you have that much money you've got to give up, but it was for the betterment of the team, I think, overall, getting guys in that are performing or have the potential to perform better. And it makes the team better defensively because he was killing them out on the field and as a DH. So at least he's out of the picture. But it's tough when you reach a certain you get near the end there, and some guys, still perform, and some guys it just goes quick, and it's really a shame.
Yeah, and that's the thing with the Rockies too, is like I said, they don't have a ton of depth. I mean, last year their AAA team was their AAA team, in fact, has been under 500 every year since 2014. So they don't have a lot of minor league depth there. Their AA team was 39 and 79. So you tell me if there's a lot there. There's not. So if they had somebody that was like they do have a few outfield top prospects, but they're in low A and high A.
Right.
So if they were in AAA, like knocking on the door, the Rockies might be more inclined to do something, but they really don't have anybody else. So he's in the final year of his guaranteed contract this year. He has a player option for next year, but he's making 21 million this year. The player option is only for 10 million next year. So he really likes Denver, so he might actually exercise that option, but would be seeing his salary cut in more than half. So that's something that the Rockies like I said, they're more willing to accommodate their veterans. If it was a 25-year-old guy out there, they would probably say, okay, you can go down to AAA. But with a guy who's been on the team for a dozen years and he's 36, it's like, okay, we'll give you a little bit more leeway.
Yeah. And like you said, he may stay one. He may say, look, I'm going to take this option. Let me play out next year, and I'm going to hang it up after that. And so, but I want to go out as a Rocky, and and with the DH, it does give him something at least that they can put him in. If the defense is that continues to slip, and at least if he can hit somewhat, at least you have an option now with the designated hitter. So, but we'll see. Who is the hot player for the Colorado Rockies right now?
I would say on offense, I would say overall and that's the thing, consistency. If you're on the road, you're talking about the Rockies. Nobody's hot, but Connor Joe, he's been really their, and I mentioned him a few minutes ago. He's really been their best overall hitter, and he's not your prototypical leadoff guy in that he's not a speed demon or anything like that, but right. He walks a lot. So he has a 370 on base percentage. So he's been doing really well. And in the past, I would say probably 10 games or so, he's getting on base a little bit higher than that, probably close to 400 his on base percentage. So he's been pretty hot. And he's still hitting 280, 300 in that span as well. Brendan Rodgers, though, if you look at the overall stats, if you completely disregard April, you're like, okay, he's doing really well. But in April, he was one of the worst players in baseball. Now he's actually been one of the best, and he's probably been the Rockies' best hitter in the month of May. In the month of April, he played in 14 games. He had 58 plate appearances. He was hitting .078. So that tells you how bad he was hitting. And in the month of May now, he has got his average from .078 to .218, because in 12 games in May, he's hitting .360. So obviously that's a lot more palatable than .078.
Yeah, for sure.
So he's also had 14 RBI in those 12 games. So he's really been their hottest hitter after he was their coldest hitter.
Right. And who is their best pitcher at this point?
Right now it's Chad Kuhl. Like I mentioned, how he was supposed to be their fifth starter, but he started out really well. He had a clunker of a game in San Francisco his last start. But still, even with that clunker of a game, it was 4 2/3. He had 5 earned runs. Even with that, his ERA is still only 2.88 on the year. He has the most wins for on the team as well. He's 3-1. So yeah, he's been their best starter so far. Relievers, the relievers really haven't done well this year. Well, they started out well, but they've gone down since. But one of their setup men, his name's Tyler Kinley. He's made 15 appearances. He has a sub-1 ERA. So he's out of the bullpen. He's done really well for them so far.
Yeah. Well, it should be an interesting series coming up. As we said, the Mets are out there for 3, I believe. And let's hope they get it. They get the games in and they're not in winter gear the whole time.
Yeah.
It is funny because now we've turned the corner here in the Northeast. We're in short sleeves finally. And, it's going to be really weird seeing snow or cold weather again. But that's the way it goes out in Colorado.
Yeah, like I was telling my co-editor, because he lives out in Colorado, I'm like, yeah, on Friday when you guys are getting snow here in Ohio, it's supposed to be 92 degrees. It's like I don't get it, but
yeah. Well, Noah, I want to thank you so much for coming on. Tell the folks where they can read your stuff and listen to your podcast.
The website is called Rox Pile, ROXPILE.com. You can check us out on Twitter at Rox Pile FS for Fansided. That's our parent company. And then our podcast is called the Rox Pile Rockies Report. We have that once a week, and we just talk about what happened essentially in the last week, look forward to the week ahead, and then occasionally we'll have some interviews as well.
All right. And again, I want to thank you so much for coming on, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you, and hopefully we can do it again.
Yep, anytime. Thanks for having me.
Okay, and I'll be back right after this. 516-619-6341. That is the comment voicemail hotline if you'd like to be a part of the show, and drop us a line, leave us a comment or a voicemail question, anything at all. Call that number 516-619-6341, or go to MetsMusings.com and click on that widget in the middle of the screen, and that's a speak pipe, and you can leave a voicemail right through your computer through your computer's microphone. Or if you prefer to do things the old-fashioned way, send us an email at metsmusings@gmail.com. The Facebook page is facebook.com/groups/MetsMusings. And if you'd like to help out the show, check out our Patreon page. Check out the campaign at patreon.com/MetsMusings. Okay, and we are back, and let's take a little trip and go down on Syracuse is 13-23. They are in last place in their division, 10.5 games back. The news doesn't get any better for Binghamton. They're 11-22, and they are 11 games back and in last place. Brooklyn has taken a nosedive. They've gone 3-7 in their last 10. They are now 14-17, and they are 10.5 back in fourth place in their division. And St. Lucie is the best team in the Mets farm system right now. They are 24-10, 5 games up in first place over Jupiter in their division. So, the news doesn't sound good, but again, they are developing players. So, you can't always go by what the scores or what the records are. Just be happy that at least St. Lucie's doing good, and that means there's some good young players down there. And, there's hope for the future. But let's take a look at some of the prospects. Mark Vientos has turned it around. He was the main story in AAA this week. He hit 3 home runs in 3 straight games. The 22-year-old third baseman now has 5 homers, 15 RBIs. After a very slow start to the season, he is coming out of it and starting to hit, so that's good news. Nick Plummer had a nice week in Syracuse as well, going 5 for 13, 3 doubles, a home run, and 6 RBIs. Plummer has 5 homers and 28 RBIs as well. Thomas Bookie pitched 9 innings across 2 starts, allowing just 1 earned run on 6 hits and 3 walks, while striking out 10. Maybe Zabuki's coming around. And David Peterson made another strong start in Syracuse, allowing just 3 hits and 2 walks while striking out 6 over 6 scoreless innings. He may be called up to the majors soon after, because of Tyler McGill's injury. Brett Batty is coming out of his little slump, as well maybe Francisco Alvarez. They both swung the bat well this past week and broke out of prolonged slumps. Batty went 9 for 25 with a pair of home runs and 4 doubles, while Alvarez was 8 for 23 with 2 doubles. Batty leads the Rumble Ponies with a .284 average through 116 at-bats. Meanwhile, Alvarez still hasn't hit a home run since April 17th after hitting 4 in his first 6 games at Double-A. But let's get him out of the slump first. The rest will take care of itself. The power will come. He's a big, strong kid. Let's just get him hitting, and that'll be quite enough for now. And Shervon Newton struggled in his first few games at High A. He got moved up to the Cyclones, and he went 2 for 14 with a double and 7 strikeouts. He's still very young. He's going against guys that may be a year or so older than him. I'm sure he will right the ship. There's a lot of talent there. If you watch him, and we'll see how he does. And, maybe he'll struggle at this level, and then next year he'll be more prepared for it. So it'll all work itself out if it's meant to. So that is the farm report for this week. Some good news, some bad news, but, overall good. Good to see Batty and Alvarez getting out of their slump, and I want to thank MetsMusings for some of these stats here that we have. So thank you to them. Okay, that's going to wrap it up for this week's show. I want to thank my guest Noah Yingling once again of the Rox Pile. Go check it out. ROXPILE. Rox Pile is a Colorado blog and podcast he does. You can get it right on the same site. Much like you can this show, you can get the audio and video at MetsMusings.com. And we are so happy that you joined us. I want to thank you for listening and or watching. Don't forget to subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button as well. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, CastBox, wherever you listen or wherever you may watch the podcast, please hit the subscribe button. That helps us grow the community and expand to new listeners. So, until next time, remember, they may be struggling a little bit, but things are going to get better. Guys are going to get healthy, and we have to keep the faith, stay optimistic, and let's go Mets. And I'll see you next time on another edition of Mets Musings.